Welcome back, my friends, to the show that never ends. Tonight, an interview of Keith Emerson, Greg Lake, and Carl Palmer.
Welcome back, my friends, to the show that never ends. We're so glad you could attend. Come inside, come inside. There behind the glass stands a real blade of grass. Be careful as you pass. Move along, move along. Come inside, the show's about to start. Guaranteed to blow your head apart. Life's not short, don't let your money slide. Really show, it happened all right. You gotta see the show. It's a dynamo. You gotta see the show. It's rock and roll. Oh, right before your eyes, feel the laughter from the skies. And he laughs until he cries, and he dies, and he dies. Come inside, the show's about to start. Guaranteed to blow your head apart. You gotta see the show. It's a dynamo. You gotta see the show. It's rock and roll. Oh.
If you have been a regular listener to Interview these past 2 years, you have by now come to know that one trademark of this radio hour is that we have very few trademarks, save for one, innovation. Interview has from the beginning set out to try and reflect each group that we have met in a personal and individual manner. In keeping with this concept, tonight you will hear not one, but actually 3 separate interviews. Each of them was taped at a different time over a period of 4 days in Los Angeles. Now, each encounter was done with the individual members of Emerson, Lake and Palmer on a one-to-one basis. And so, we decided to present the show this way in an attempt to give the most accurate interview possible of these 3 very different personalities. Now, the first segment will deal with Keith Emerson, the second with Greg Lake, and the third with Carl Palmer. And segment 4 will contain a combination of the 3. So if you're ready, I'd like you to meet Keith Emerson.
Well, I didn't have much of a musical education. I mean, my musical education existed in the form of an 80-year-old teacher by the name of Miss Marshall, and she came around every Saturday morning, gave me lessons, you know?
Miss Marshall.
Yes, and that lasted for about, say, 4 or 5 years. What came out of that was that I could read music, and I could play, and I understood a bit of theory. After that, I taught myself. Now, I didn't study harmony and composition and counterpoint and all that sort of thing. This was all done, basically, by... I bought books and read about whatever I wanted to do. Maybe it's an orchestration. I'd buy a book on it and read it up and then do an orchestration. When I started writing fugues, I bought a book on how a fugue is constructed, and it's constructed quite mathematically, really. And just making various notes and studying how the Bach fugues flowed, I based my fugues around that way.
When you say to yourself, God, I hear this thing that I want to do, and you know, it's an electronic thing, and I want to create this sound or have this ability or alternative to use on stage, yet you know, it's not in an equipment catalog, or you haven't seen it in a music store. How do you go about translating that into a physical instrument or tool or knob that appears on your board?
Well, there are certain sounds which I know through past experience, and I know how to go about wiring it up for that particular sound. But usually if I'm arranging a new piece of music, I don't want to use any of those sounds which I know about already. Mm-hmm. If I've got the sound in my head and I go, ah, yes, I know how to go about that and wire it up, you know. I could do it that way, but usually what I tend to do is from time to time, in my experimenting, I come across a thing quite by accident. I go, yo, that's fantastic, you know? And I jot that down. And usually at that time when I hear that particular sound, I say, well, I know what that's going to be used for, you know? That's exactly what I want. The sound that I used at the beginning of Hoedown, you know, do-ya. Sort of like a big wailing sort of thing. That was discovered completely by accident, and just straight away, just in the spur of the moment, I said, that is the sound for Hoedown, and it went in straight away.
So it's more or less of a fact of stumbling on something and then maybe cataloging it for when it'll work. And
yes.
I see. But
I mean, obviously, at the time when I came up with that, just for instance, the Hoedown sound, I mean, I did experiment that with a few other ideas which were kicking around in my head at the time, that effect. But it didn't go anywhere, it didn't fit anywhere else. It was just so natural to go there. There was one interesting period that I went through. I was really down one day, and I took a load of downers. I took about 10 Mandys or something, you know?
Mm.
And I was really, really zonked, you know, and they rang up and they said, "You coming down the studio today?"
Uh-huh.
And, Jesus, you know, mouth was all dried up.
See, this is
I felt like a big piece of blotting paper, you know? So I staggered down the studio, and I fell at the piano, you know. And I said, "Okay, what are we doing today then?" "Oh, yeah. How about show me the way to go home?" All right, so I just poured myself a drink, you know, staggered, you know. I just felt in that sort of like laid-back mood, you know, falling everywhere. And Greg said, "All right then, great." So he said, "I'll sing at the same time," which is the only time he's ever done that, you know, sung at the same time as we've laid down the instruments and everything. It was all one-off thing. We did about 140 takes. Not for my part. I improvised the whole thing every time. Each take was totally improvised. But Greg wanted to keep going over it because he wanted the diction on this word done, and he wasn't pleased with that, you know, so it had to be done again, you know. And I was getting a bit fed up after about the 100th take because, like, I thought I'd been doing pretty well. I hadn't managed to copy an intro once in that time. You know, every intro I'd done, every song was a gem as far as I was concerned. You know.
What do you want from me?
But yeah, and in the end I suggested, well, look, why don't you put your vocals on afterwards? You know, because I was, my eyelids were kept up by matchsticks at that time, and. He said, no, he wanted to do it at that time, so I had, 40 more takes. And it's come out pretty good, actually. We stuck some orchestra on it at the end, and that's going to be on Volume 2.
It will be on Volume 2 in that manner, far out?
Yes.
That's far out.
I made an abrupt stop of all that. I remember the date. It was January the 12th of this year. And I had a final Rave Up Party. You know, Greg was around my house, and a good friend of mine, Alvin Lee. And we ate and we drank ourselves silly, and at the end of the meal, brought the mirror out, right? Look out with a big rock, and boy, did we get ripped. And at 12 o'clock, when 12 o'clock came, I said, "That's it. Finished, no more." I didn't want to stop on the 13th because I thought I'd be unlucky. And I finished then, you know, didn't touch anymore.
But just blow it out all at once and get it
yeah,
nice
that's right,
way
yeah.
to end it.
Yeah. It was a great party, you know. I mean, at the end of it, you know, we were up until about, right through the night, till the morning. And madness developed through the night, and we sort of, we got up, and me and Alvin just like went out for a run. And we went down to the beach, and instead of stopping at the beach, we just kept on running into the sea.
Just take a pebble and cast it to the sea. Then watch the ripples that unfold into me. My face spills so gently into your eyes, disturbing the waters on your grass. Wounded words of laughter are graveyards of the past. Photographs are grey and torn, scattered in your fields. Letters of your memories are not real.
I think that a musician gains a lot if he puts himself through many stages of consciousness. And I guess out of all occupations, the musician goes to about the most extremes in order to find what is best for him. And I guess I've really covered everything that there is to cover.
Keith Emerson will return in the last segment of the show. Next up, you meet Greg Lake when Interview returns. Hello, I'm Jim Ladd, and if you just joined us, there are two things that you should know. Now, number one is you're late. And number two is you're about to meet Greg Lake as our interview of Emerson, Lake and Palmer continues.
Unbelievable, isn't it? It's against us today, you know.
It's a what?
It is against us.
You know, it feels like there's some kind of a planet out of alignment or...
Yeah, no, it's totally wrong here because the telephone's going to ring in a minute. I know it. Yeah, it's gonna, I'm just going to get it all together, then it's going to go.
It's going to go
ring, right?
Well, that's okay. We can always edit around it. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Can you move your microphone up a little bit?
Yes, I can. Should I put it on this side?
No, where it was good. Just move it up closer to yourself.
There?
Yeah. I think we should say that we're sitting at the mouth of, I guess what it is Long Beach Harbor.
Yeah.
And there's a bunch of people going by in small boats. And it's real loud here because it's in between both shores, so you get the noise, man. But screw it. If you want to hear what Greg Lake has to say, we'll have to put up with a couple of power boats. That's it. Let's talk about your writing here for a moment, which is extremely interesting to me. The song on the Works album, which is a phenomenal album. I mean, I don't know how you put into a spoken word what is found on that record. I think it's really a special piece. There's a song on there that I like very much that seemed kind of out of place in the 70s because people aren't putting out that kind of energy, which is Hallowed Be Thy Name. I really like that tune. And I hope they're having fun. You know, that's all.
Yeah, I wish they'd sing, man. I'd love to see one of them go down. Energy and Hallowed Be Thy Name, yes.
I mean, you spoke very, very, very bluntly about some things going down, and that's refreshing, you know, to hear.
In a way, it's a protest song, you know. And as such, I suppose it's a bit corny. There was an age when there was a lot of protest songs, wasn't there? But it was you know, you just can't help it. There are things that go on these days that still I feel the same way about as I did 10 years ago. They peeve me, some things. So, I mean, they come out in my writing.
There may be an omen moment, but there's very few folk in focus. Not the first, not the last, not the least. You needn't be well to be wealthy, but you've got to be whole to be holy. Fetch the robe, fetch the cloth, fetch the priest. Oh, this planet of ours is a mess. I bet heaven's the same. Look, the madman said, son, as a friend, tell me what's in a name. Hallowed be thy name.
Artists are sensitive people as well, you know. I mean, I'm sensitive. And you know, I don't presume really to know anything. But I mean, I just understand small atoms of things, you know, and I string them together and it makes a song. And that, really, rather than communicating a message, it's a question of communicating a feeling. And I think that's what music's done in the last 10, 15 years, is raise the feeling and the spirit of people and help them to grow through their young life.
How long ago did you write the song Lucky Man now? How long was that for?
Long time ago.
Long time ago.
I wrote that when I was a boy, little boy, 12 years old.
All right.
It's true, I did. I wrote that when I was...
When you were 12 years old? Well, now that you have your own white horses and all of that, are you happy as that cat, or are you unhappy as you thought he would be when you were 12?
Yeah, I consider myself a lucky man, yeah. But